All right, I think we are live. Um, I'm Jason.yeager with EXP Realty, and I've got some really important news that I wanted to share with everyone that is already in the EXP environment. This is going to be very applicable and fresh news for a lot of you, I think. Um, there's just a lot of speculation and things of how we are going to be moving forward in this NAR settlement environment. And the biggest I think question was, it's beyond just buyer broker compensation, going away off the MLS, how we communicate, how with our sellers and with our buyers, how we are to get paid. In fact, we've had some meetings. I just came out of a meeting with our one of our brokers here in Southwest Missouri, who shared with us some very important contract updates because now we do have the contracts available to us to start using in our business here till next week, when everything in our MLS here in my MLS that I use will be effective July 29th. Obviously, the August 17th date is still very important as far as nationwide when everything will go into effect. But now they're starting to roll out, the changes for the forms and how to explain these forms to our clients. And really, ultimately, the biggest um, piece of news that just got dropped this morning from EXP is that EXP is no longer going to be participating in broker to broker compensation. And so, what does that mean for us? So, I will be honest, when I initially um, saw that, actually, I want to share my screen real quick with you guys. And let me go to the workplace deal, and then I'll share that screen. Okay. So this is in workplace, which some of you guys may have already seen this. If not, I want to go ahead and just play it for you guys, just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here, where we're getting this information. This is straight from Holly Mayberry. This was in Facebook Workplace on the EXP Realty announcements group here. Let me turn this up real quick. This is straight from Holly Mayberry. This was in Facebook Workplace on the EXP Realty. One second, I'm getting an echo back from my other streaming page. There, needed that. Sorry about that. All right, so let's play this.
It's been an incredibly busy summer with lots of changes, and we know we're not done yet. This summer, we saw updates from local and state associations with regard to their forms, and some have been good. Some have been challenged, some have been confusing, maybe even a little bit problematic with antitrust and Department of Justice. As a result, EXP Realty, we've launched our own suite of listing forms to better serve you as you take care of our clients in the field. We found it really important to make sure that our clients are at the center point of all decision making in their negotiations. As a result, EXP Realty will not participate in broker to broker compensation. The client needs to make that determination. We've led the way with our single property buyer broker and our buyer broker 2.0. We want to continue to take care of our clients at the highest level so we can take care of you as you build your business. These forms are going to be live in SkySlope here very soon, if not already. And we're so excited and passionate about continuing to take care of you as the industry evolves.
And that was it. She just dropped that bomb and then like walked away. So we were joking about that earlier today at this meeting. I went to an in-person meeting with several agents in our area here in like the Springfield, Missouri area, and had Deborah Wilkinson, one of our Missouri brokers, came down to help educate us on this particular change that just apparently went into publicized this morning. I think it was decided on last night before they had decided to come down and try to walk us through some of the best practices moving forward on how to implement our these new changes to the contract and addendums and things that are riders that we have approved now to be used. So obviously, broker to broker compensation, right? When I first read that and heard about it, it sounded like, oh my gosh, this is going to be how are we going to operate, But thinking through now after going to this meeting and getting some really good nuggets here, I want to give you some takeaways that I got from that meeting for those of you who may not be plugged into a local network. If you're a single agent that is kind of operating out there on your own, get plugged in to EXP World. There are going to be tons and tons of Google Meet ups, online Zoom meetings. You're welcome to join us at the Worley Real Estate Network is the network that I am joined in with, and we want to help, especially the newer agents. I think might actually have an advantage because you don't know anything else. But for agents that have been in the business for any period of time, having change in the industry is scary. But if you know the rules, if somebody can clearly explain how we are to operate moving forward, then understanding the sandbox that you're playing in, and then just going out and killing it, right? Give me the rules, and I will figure out how to play this game well. That's how I tend to try to look at things, instead of being deathly afraid of change all the time. Figure out how to operate, and then go and figure out how to do it better than anybody else, right? Be competitive. So, the broker to broker compensation announcement that EXP is no longer offering broker to broker compensation. It just means that instead of a seller agreeing to pay a listing agent X percent, let's say 5.5%, total, and then we're sharing that then the brokerage that you're hiring is sharing that compensation with all the other brokers in your MLS, then now we're having that compensation come directly from the seller. So we're just eliminating that option. What was shared with me at this meeting today was that I guess the state of California has already rolled out their contract changes, and they were sent a cease and desist letter from the Department of Justice to redo all their forms. There's some violations there with the NAR settlement that aren't going to be able to work for them. And so I think EXP, from what they've told us, is that EXP feels like this is where the industry is going to be heading anyway, that probably eventually, to eliminate all the risk of any lawsuits or claims of collusion, that the broker to broker compensation for all brokerages, eventually this is where we're all going to be heading anyway. So you basically this is the main takeaway that I want to be able to hopefully get people's minds around, is that the way that we do business will pretty much stay the same. We'd have to have better conversations with both sides of whoever you're representing on how we as agents get paid, right? So really what it breaks down to is, instead, like I said, instead of the seller paying the listing broker, and then the listing broker is on the settlement statement sharing the total amount with splitting it, with another broker. Now we're just letting the seller decide what the compensation will be, right? And they can offer compensation, but it's going to come directly from the seller. So in our offers with EXP Realty, we will have a compensation rider, a buyer broker compensation rider that will state exactly that, that we are requesting you can negotiate on behalf of your buyers to have compensation, a concession, if you want, to be put in there, or the compensation to go towards the buyer's compensation agreement that you have in your buyer's agency agreement. So if you negotiate, or if your fee to work with the buyer is 3%, you can write an offer to, an agent in their listing and attach that rider and have it be paid from the seller instead of from the listing broker. Does that make sense? That's the biggest, I think, real change. So at a listing agreement, you're only going to be negotiating your listing side fee, whatever you want that to be. It doesn't have, but just know that if in the event that they allow the situation now too, is that if you have a buyer who is unrepresented that wants to buy your listing, make an offer on your listing, you could negotiate a fee that the seller is willing to pay for compensation for other brokers, and then you could have a fee for if you end up having both sides, basically, if that makes sense. So yeah, let's say you charge the seller 3% to list and market and negotiate and advocate for them on the listing side only. Then if somebody calls on your sign and they don't have an agent, they love the property, you show the property and they want to make an offer, you're not representing that buyer, right? They're an unrepresented buyer, but you can still facilitate bring an offer to your seller. You're representing the seller, and so you might be able to you can write in whatever fee that you want on top of your listing side fee, and then it might be, save the seller some money in it, but it would be potentially more than what you would make if you were just on the listing side in that case. So you determine what that is. Now EXP has also stated that they would recommend, it's not required, but they would recommend that you don't put an amount for buyer's broker compensation. When you ask the seller, do you want to offer buyer broker compensation? If they are adamant about saying, yeah, we're only going to pay a flat fee, of $5,000, you can write in an amount that they're capped at, but leaving it up because we don't know what the offer is going to be. If the offer is really terrible, then it might be in your seller's best interest to state that we are offering compensation to other brokers, right? So just write in the offer what you're asking, and that might actually end up saving your seller some money rather than capping, putting a hard percentage of the purchase price in there, or certainly a fixed amount in there. So again, that is recommended, but not required. So that was kind of the two biggest takeaways. I mean, there's a ton of other questions and things for the forms. I'd be happy to kind of go through the forms that they've shared in this post here. Let's just kind of walk through some of that real quick here. This is the exclusive authorization and right to sell. So this is basically this is a listing agreement that is separate from the Missouri Association of Realtors exclusive listing agreement that right now they're saying they're needing to add in all of the broker disclosure information that's involved with being able to be compliant. So there will be probably an addendum to this, and that's expected to be coming very soon. And then it's your choice. You can use this exclusively. I think it's a very clear and simplified version of the Missouri Association of Realtors, the MAR forms. If you're not in Missouri, I'm sorry. This probably isn't, this section of this video isn't going to be directly relatable for you. I don't think these forms, I believe, are going to be able to be used in whatever state that you're in. And this is an EXP approved um, form. So maybe this would, yeah, this would be completely applicable for anybody, no matter what state you're in. But I would just check with your local broker, your state broker, to make sure when these other forms that they're giving us can, be implemented. Here, it's my understanding that they will be very soon as they, put the agency relationships that are available to the client in them. So this authorization and exclusive authorization and right to sell, you put the property address information in here, the length of the agreement, and when it begins and when it ends. It's all right here on this one line. Uh, the agency disclosure, agency relationship between seller and broker determines how broker will work on seller's behalf. Broker's agency relationship with seller is disclosed and documented in a separate disclosure form. So then you put the listing price. Any adjustment to the listing price shall be agreed upon in writing between seller and broker. The amount, notice right here in bold, the amount or rate of real estate commissions is not fixed by law. They are set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between seller and broker. So they're making sure that they highlight all the areas that want to be very clear that commissions are obviously and have always been negotiable. Listing broker compensation. So section 5 right here, broker will earn compensation. The listing broker compensation, as further, worded in here, is how they're going to define that, called the listing broker compensation. When a sale of the property has been completed, regardless of who has found the buyer, listing broker compensation shall be paid by seller in U.S. funds at the time of and as a condition of sale completion. This agreement shall serve as escrow instructions. Listing broker compensation is check only one. And then you have to put a ascertainable amount in here. Cannot be subject to, or some other per MLS or whatever. You put either a fixed flat rate or a percentage of the gross purchase price of the property as reflected on the final settlement statement, or you could write in other here, some other agreement that you come to. But it has to be an ascertainable amount of what your fee is to represent the seller only. Okay. Again, it's your business. You set that whatever you feel like. You portray your own value, and then you tell them what your fee is to hire you. Okay. Unrepresented buyer. If buyer is not represented by a broker, in other words, a buyer's broker, then broker EXP assumes additional liability and paperwork responsibilities. In this scenario, broker EXP will not represent the buyer, but will facilitate the completion of necessary forms and ensure fair treatment of all parties in this situation. The listing broker compensation shall be exactly, and then you can write in an additional amount be above this amount that you write in here in section above it, right? So this would be, for me, I might, do like 3% to list your property. And then if I procure a buyer who, calls on the sign and they don't have an agent, I'm not representing them, but I can certainly, procure that buyer for you. And then it might be an additional whatever, or blank percentage of the gross purchase price of the property, 1%, 2%, 3%, whatever. So again, you decide, you and your seller negotiate what that scenario will look like. Okay. Then if upon expiration or early cancellation of this agreement, broker gives seller a written list of prospective buyers, this is where you put in your protection period right here, right? So that's pretty standard. Seller understands that having multiple exclusive real estate listing agreements at the same time may lead to seller having to pay additional fees. Thus, seller confirms that seller is not party to any active exclusive. This used to be a box that we check on the MAR form that is or is not. So they're just, stating you're by signing this whole agreement, you're stating that you are not currently under an exclusive listing agreement with somebody else. Seller concessions are not required or fixed by law. The amount of any seller concession is fully negotiable. Buyer may request a concession from seller, seller concession, in the form of a credit to be given to buyer at close of escrow. This seller concession may be used to reduce buyer's loan costs, title and escrow fees, and right here it writes in buyer's broker fee, property repair costs, and or any other allowable buyer costs and fees. The final amount of the seller concession must be determined in writing, whether in the purchase contract or in other applicable documentation. All seller concessions are negotiable. So really right there is where the biggest changes. That my feeling, my best guess of how this whole thing is going to play out moving forward is that we will continue to get offers from buyer's agents on listings, whether the seller already upfront agreed with their listing agent to offer compensation to brokers, right? You can still write it in the offer, in the contract, and request it as a buyer's agent. Okay. And in the contract itself, there's a rider, which I'll show that to you here in a minute, that attaches how all of that's going to play out, that you're requesting compensation directly from the seller. So basically, instead of having the total percent and then we're splitting it out, on the line item on the settlement statement, 2.5% to EXP, 2.5% to, ABC Realty, it'll just be a different line item on the seller side if they've agreed to it'll show up as a concession basically, instead of in that commission other area on a settlement statement. So I really don't think that much will change. I think that most buyers will still try to get their fee that they're working they would otherwise pay their buyer broker directly to be covered by the seller. So we'll see how many offers end up being able to go through without having to offer any compensation to a buyer's broker. Seller authorizes, section 7 here, authorization to promote. Seller authorizes and instructs broker to advertise and promote the property as follows. So we have the EXP exclusives that we can get permission to advertise their property on there. That's kind of like our own little listing network there on those multiple listing on the MLS. Through placement of a for sale sign, through placement of photos and videos and virtual tours of the property on the internet and in other electronic and online media platforms. So these are all the check boxes that you would have to check that they're allowing to advertise their property. Broker is or is not authorized to disclose the existence of offers, including sales price and or terms. This used to be, on the MAR form, it's kind of two separate questions there, either is or is not authorized to disclose the existence of authors, and is or is not authorized to disclose the terms of authors. Now, this basically just went one question to say is or is not authorized to disclose the existence of offers, including sales price and or terms and conditions of sale to third parties. Property showings and access. Seller authorizes or does not authorize the installation of a lockbox key safe on the property. Seller will safeguard valuables. Seller accepts responsibility for preparing the property to minimize the likelihood of injury, damage, or loss of personal property. Seller shall provide access to the property at a reasonable time and upon reasonable notice. Broker services. So this goes through all of the things that we are going to do for the client. And then down here, it says all the seller commitment. Seller understands and commits to perform as follows. Seller possess and shall continue to possess full legal authority to sell the property. Provide all documentation reasonably requested by the broker to confirm seller's ability to perform under this agreement. Timely disclosure of property conditions. Immediate disclosure to broker of any known hidden defects, cooperate with brokers in the sale process, and act in good faith to accomplish the sale of the property. Maintain the property's condition, inform broker of any past due mortgage, loan amounts, tax payments, insurance payments, etc. Inform broker prior to leasing, mortgaging, or encumbering the property in a way that demonstrates that broker is not responsible for custody or condition of the property or for its management. And seller, in seller's discretion, shall consult with seller's advisors for specific legal, financial, tax, and other professional advice. So then fixtures, you can write in here what's included, what's excluded, any rented or leased items, recordings at the property. If the seller has an audio video recording system at the property, seller understands that recording and transmitting of audio and or video may result in a violation of state and or federal laws. Seller is advised to post a conspicuous notice on the property regarding the existence of such devices in the property. Seller acknowledges that prospective buyers may photograph or video the interior of the property. Therefore, sellers should remove any items of personal nature that seller does not want photographed, recorded, or transmitted, such as family photos, paperwork, and other personal identifiable information. Cancellation. This agreement may be canceled prior to the end of the term upon mutual written agreement between seller and broker. The governing law. This agreement shall be governed and construed in accordance with the laws of the state. Fair housing. The property is offered in compliance with federal, state, and local fair housing laws. The FERPTA disclosure, Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act is applicable. Potentially competing sellers and buyers. Broker may represent or take listings on similar property types to the property. Broker may also represent buyers looking for a property similar to seller's property. The client will always make the determination of which property is best for them to purchase. Electronic signatures, authorization, assignment, cyber protection, all this other stuff that's very much more simplified than our MAR listing agreement. I think this is awesome. Once they get the broker disclosure necessary information included in here, then this will be ready to go. It's not quite ready to go on its own just yet, they said. So I would maybe they said it's coming very, very soon, like not months or, weeks away, probably within, hopefully the next week, we'll be able to have the final version of that. So there is the EXP approved listing agreement that we can use eventually instead of the MAR form if you want. Now, the trick with the MAR form is that it still includes buyer broker compensation, what you're going to offer for buyer broker compensation. We aren't offering buyer broker compensation. It will be coming from us. Again, it will be coming from the seller. So you would write in 0 to buyer, designated buyers agents, transaction brokers, sub agents, yada yada. Those sections where we would typically itemize out what we're offering for different types of buyer brokers out there. EXP is no longer offering broker to broker compensation. So just want you to kind of start training your thought process of it's not coming from us EXP anymore. It's gonna come have to come from the seller. If you want to get paid on the buy side, you have to request it from the seller and not from, and that's is how we're eventually going to all be heading in that direction. So over the next days and weeks, and certainly in August 17th, when this is all rolled out, everybody will have, every state, every MLS, will have their own forms and everything. But I think buyer broker to broker compensation is phasing out. So you just need to negotiate that with the seller directly. Okay. That's very important. That's the biggest change on that. So let me look at another form here. The disclosure and acknowledgement of non-representation. So this would be in the case where you had somebody call on a sign, call on your listing, and they don't have a realtor, and they're not, and this is been a little bit of an education for me too, on as far as buyer's agency or and seller agency goes, is that you can obviously take on a buyer, represent a buyer as dual agent in the state of Missouri. We do have disclosed dual agency. However, it is not designed for when you already have a listing agreement, you have a fiduciary relationship with your seller, and then you acquire this new buyer that you don't have a relationship with prior to that taking that listing. And then they decide that they want representation, you know, um, you can, but um, not it's not how it was intended to operate. It's intended for when you already have two, three, four, five, six, however many buyers you want to be currently working with right now, and then you've got a list of listings already, or then you go and grab a listing, a new listing while you're under buyer's agency with however many other buyers that you're working with at that time. In that case, now you have already been disclosed, but after the fact, then it's a little bit different situation. Really, you should just be operating as a transaction broker for that buyer, or they have no representation. And this is what the form that you would use if you procure a buyer that is unrepresented with one of your listings. Okay, so it just you put the EXP Realty clients is, and you represent which side, right? Um, then the property address here, and then do not disclose any information to EXP Realty that you would not want disclosed to EXP Realty clients. Disclosure of non-representation. EXP Realty represents only EXP Realty clients concerning their sale or purchase of the property as applicable. EXP Realty does not represent you concerning your sale or purchase of the property as applicable. EXP Realty owes the following duties to all parties in a transaction. The minimum services clients and non-clients alike is obviously honesty, disclosure, and accounting. Okay, we offer those regardless of whether or not we have a fiduciary relationship to that person or not. Okay, we should all kind of know and understand that's kind of agent class 101, realtor class 101. You represent and warrant to EXP Realty that you are either A, unrepresented by a real estate brokerage company, or B, that you are represented by a real estate brokerage company and that you have instructed that real estate brokerage company in writing not to be present to negotiate any offers pertaining to the property, and that all offers pertaining to the property are to be presented and negotiated by and between yourself and EXP Realty without the involvement of your real estate brokerage company. You waive any requirement that all negotiations concerning the property to be conducted exclusively through your real estate brokerage company, if any, and EXP Realty. Transaction documents is section 3 here. EXP Realty will use information that you provide to fill out and complete transaction-related documents concerning the property, such as, for example, a purchase and sale agreement and related documents for the benefit of EXP Realty clients. This act by EXP Realty will not cause EXP Realty to become your representative. You are responsible for ensuring your own understanding and compliance. So if they ask questions about the forms themselves, you are not allowed to give them advice. They will have to seek legal counsel. That is one of the benefits of being able to have full representation, right? When they don't understand the contract and they want your advice, your advice and your advocacy are unavailable when they are unrepresented. Use your own professionals. You should seek advice from your own legal, tax, insurance, investment, real estate, and other professionals in connection with your sale or purchase of the property as applicable. Electronic signatures, pretty standard by signing below, and then you have all parties sign down there. So again, just probably an extra little safeguard for EXP to be able to say, hey, this person came to us to write an offer on this property and they were claiming that they do not have an agent, which, as we all know, can happen a lot. And in my thought process is that the first time home buyers are really the ones that I think are going to be suffering the most from these changes. And, you know, when you have closing costs, down payment, earnest money, home inspection, appraisal, all of it, right? That was already a mountain of effort, planning, blood, sweat, tears for a lot of first time home buyers to come up with that part of being a homeowner before any of these changes took place. You know, now we've always had buyer's agency here in Missouri since I've been an agent since 2017. I've always had buyer's agency agreements in place to establish what my fee is, but we always have that conversation. We're going to attempt to collect my fee from the seller or the listing broker, right? That was always in our buyer's agency forms. But some people were writing in that your fee was zero. And if you continue to do that, then you may very well find yourself in a situation where your fee might actually be zero. So the first time home buyers have three options, the way I see it. You know, you either try to write in a concession amount to help pay towards your buyer broker, which could potentially, if there's other offers that they're competing with, one person is able to pay their broker, one is not. One needs the seller to pay for it. What offer do you think the seller is going to choose? The next option would be that they float it on top. The first scenario would be they write the offer for, let's say, full ask or something close to, right? But then it's full ask minus, the buyer broker compensation, whatever concessions that you're asking for. The next solution would then obviously be here's full ask, but we're going to write it on top and still ask for the concession, but then it's still the same net to the seller because you were floating it up on top. But then potentially, depending on how the property was positioned in the marketplace, compared to the comps, if it was already kind of pushing the envelope, the top end range of market value, the realm of possibility is what I call it. If you were already pushing outside the realm of possibility with your list price, and now you've got buyers trying to float the buyer's broker compensation on top so that they'll choose, be a stronger offer. It's because it's basically a full price offer, but then the property's got to appraise for that amount, Again, if you've been in the business any number of years, this is pretty standard stuff when you have a for sale by owner. If your buyer that you're working with falls in love with a property that is for sale by owner, as long as they call you first, you can usually go in and negotiate your fee with the seller, right? And, 9 times out of 10, they are willing to offer something, uh, already rolled into their price. Now, sometimes they will say, I'm willing to pay, 3%, but it's going to be on top, So it's just a matter of whether the buyer still sees the value in paying more for the property, and ultimately that's what it's about. If the buyer loves the property and is willing to pay, over ask to cover their expense of being able to essentially roll that cost into their loan to pay their buyer broker, go for it, But it may end up being a situation where the buyer's overpaid for the property. Buyer had to pay more for that property to cover their representation cost, And is that fair? That's the second option. Then the third option would be, we don't want to overpay. We don't want to lose the property by coming in with a weaker offer, coming in at list or below list, and then asking for concessions on top of that. And then we're not even talking about like the situation where they don't have closing costs. They need help with the actual closing costs separate from the buyer's broker compensation. those types of buyers are really going to be at a disadvantage. You know, if you're already having to ask for potentially $5,000, $6,000 in seller concessions for their uh, closing costs for their loan, title, all of it, and now you're asking for an additional 7,500, 8,000, $9,000, depending on the price of the property to cover their buyer broker obligation. Now they might really be at a disadvantage. The third option is that they don't want to face either of those scenarios. Then their only other option is to terminate their buyer's agency agreement and just go straight to the listing agent. And I think a good chunk of the marketplace will forego representation. They love the house far more than they love having a great realtor work for them. They want the house. And that's what I feel is putting buyers where they're going to be hurting, where it doesn't help the buyer that can't afford their own representation, that they feel forced to go straight to the listing agent to make an offer. So that's my 2 cents on that. Let me know your thoughts. I'm sure this probably will get a lot of questions, comments. I would tell you at the meeting that we had, trying to go through all the ifs, ands, and buts scenarios. Our broker, Deborah Wilkinson, bless her heart, she did an amazing job of keeping even keel without, emotions can get involved with a lot of this because of change. It's scary. But again, we have great leaders that are able to toe the line here and really explaining that we're trying to stay ahead of the curve here, because this is where it's all kind of transitioning to anyway. We're just getting in on it a little early, So the last form here that they've shared with us is the amendment to real estate listing agreement. Okay. Now, this amendment supplements and amends the real estate listing agreement dated on such and such date between the seller and the broker for the property and you put the location there. This amendment is needed because of recent changes in the real estate industry that affect multiple listing service rules and how compensation to a buyer's broker can be offered. Except as otherwise expressly provided in this amendment, the terms and conditions in the listing agreement shall remain in full force and effect and continue uninterrupted. These updated changes shall become effective on, and then you would put the date, the effective date of that. The amount or rate of real estate commissions is not fixed by law. They are set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between seller and broker. Broker EXP does not share listing broker compensation with a buyer's broker. So this will be, if you've got a listing out there that is currently authorized, to share buyer broker compensation after August 17th, and really after July 29th for Missouri is when our changes go into effect. You would want to go ahead and amend any current listing agreements to have it be, listing compensation, deciding what your listing side compensation is going to be. If you agreed to, 6% on your original one, then you agreed to whatever your listing side compensation is and what you're going to offer. If you were on our MAR forms in Missouri, we already kind of had it broken down what we were offering in there anyway. So it's kind of superfluous, but instead of it coming from the broker, again, instead of it coming from the listing broker, it's now coming from the seller. Okay. So you're getting them to agree to pay you X%. And if a buyer is not represented by a buyer's broker, no offer is not represented by a buyer's broker, then broker assumes additional liability, and then you would establish in the event of an unrepresented buyer. But then in the event of a represented buyer, you would write in what uh, the concessions. Buyer may request a concession from seller concession in the form of a credit to be given to buyer at close of escrow. This seller concession may be used to reduce buyer's loan costs, title, and escrow fees. So we're again saying we're not actually here, we're not even establishing what the buyer broker compensation is because we are not offering buyer broker compensation on this any longer. So you need to establish what your listing side agreement is, and then if if there's any listing price changes. Now, the one thing I have a question on is we're not asking them if they are agreeing here to even offer a concession. It's going to be on the if it's on the offer, then that's where they would agree to the concession anyway. That would be applied towards a buyer broker compensation, if that makes sense. So that is one thing that I want to get some clarification on this form here is all of the, let's say you had a listing for 6% originally before the change, and now we're going to amend it, and then you're only going to establish what your listing side is, and then leave it up to the offers to come in to see what they're asking for compensation. It may actually be less than what they agreed to pay originally, so they might actually end up saving the seller some money, which is I think why EXP, the brokers, had advised to not put in a dollar amount on the listing, on the original listing um, agreement, for that exact reason. So the rest of it's pretty standard. If you were going to make any other changes to the listing agreement, you would put the price change here, the extension date if you needed to right here, and then any other special agreements right down here. That is it as far as the forms that they have given us here. There are some other additional forms that I don't have in digital format right now to be able to share with you guys, and we'll just get lost in the weeds on all these other different scenarios. But that compensation rider agreement that we will essentially be using with every offer from here on out, basically you would write in, and when you're representing a buyer, you'll write in what you're asking the seller to contribute towards buyer broker compensation on that rider. And then you have to attach it in that box on the contract itself. I wish I had that scanned. I think what we'll do is maybe next day or two, I'll try to get back on again, and I'll get a PDF uploaded for one where I just received it in my hands this morning, and I just wanted to get on as soon as while it was fresh on my mind to share with you guys, any updates and news pertaining to this NAR lawsuit. Don't be afraid of change. I would just don't freak out because things are different. It'll be better. We'll have better conversations with our sellers, better conversations with our buyers, and that's a good thing, if we want to start getting away from KV core training for now, Bold Trail, whatever it's going to here in the next very coming soon, and really start focusing on dialogues particularly training to these NAR changes, I would be more than happy to help navigate that with you guys and get into the trenches and start inviting some, like live role play times that we can start having open discussion and coaching through how to have those good conversations with people at a buyer's consultation and at a listing appointment. to help maximize and gain confidence and understanding, show value, relay what your value is, and be able to not be afraid to ask for the business, be able to stand on what your fee is. And a lot of buyers agents have been afraid to even go through, even have a buyer's consultation, to have somebody actually hire them, the same as you would with a seller. They said this early on when these changes first got announced through EXP. Treat your buyers like you treat your sellers. It's does your buyers no good to just go drop everything, go meet at a house, write an offer, and you're never even explained or talked about what you offer. This is why people view us as door openers. This is why people have such a low esteem for us as agents, and the value that we provide people in the marketplace. There will always be people that need to buy and sell real estate for forever. This has been going on. It's one of the oldest trades, if you will, jobs that's been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So, um, you know, our value and need, our expertise, and certain things that we have to offer are what separate us from the competition. And ultimately, we'll be able to help you stand on whatever fee that you decide is due to you. As a professional, view yourself as a professional and portray yourself as a professional, and people will think of you as a professional and treat you as a professional and compensate you as a professional. That's all that I got. I hope that you guys got some value. Leave me some comments down below, and I'd love to do some more deep dive into all these NAR changes here. I'm Jason with EXP Realty, and I'll see you.